Well, my father was a civil engineer, and during the First World War, when he couldn't get back to Norway because of the North Sea was mined, heavily mined, the North Sea.
Yeah.
So he went. He discovered that there were good jobs in India for canals, railways, you name it, anything to do with civil engineering. And he went and he got a job there. And my mother and myself, who had been left in Glasgow, where I was born, we were sent to join him in India, and that's how I started my life there.
And so what age were you when you went to school in India first?
Up at 10.
And that was to which school? That was
Auckland House.
in
Simla.
In Simla, right? Okay. And then after Auckland House, you went to
St. Denis.
Okay. Which
was in at that time was in Murree, India, but then of course at the partition, it became Pakistan.
And what age were you when you first went to St. Denis?
I think about 13.
And that would be so what year was that, roughly?
Well, I can only count back from when I left. I left in 1936.
Well, you were born in 1917, so if you were 13, that would have been 1930.
Yes, about that.
Yeah. And you were there for how many years?
Until 1936.
So about 6 years at St. Denis.
Yeah.
So how did you get up to Murree from?
Well, Murree, we'd have instructions to meet Lahore. I think Lahore was the meeting point to get up to Murree. At Rawalpindi, everyone evacuated out of the trains. Yeah. There weren't any more. And from there, we had a train of taxis. We used to pick up so many girls each time, about 6, I suppose, as many would fit in the taxi. And there would be a train of taxis going all the way up 8,000 feet or so to get.
What time of year was that?
That would be March. Between March the 15th and March the 17th was the time of the month that we would rejoin school.
Right.
And it was horrible. it was
the journey was horrible.
Well, the journey was horrible because I was sick all the time, needless to say. And
how long did it take to get there?
I don't know. We'd meet, I suppose, in the mornings, and we had breakfast. I remember the last breakfast we had before we got up to school was the breakfast, silver breakfast, where you had, proper tables and things in the restaurant, in the railway restaurant, the restaurant in Rawalpindi, the railway station.
When you got to the school, when you first went there in 1930, what house did you join?
Well, we were all given our 4 houses. There was Slesser, which was blue tie, and blue anything else. And that was mine. I was in Slesser. And then there was a Bale house, which was yellow, and Nightingale, which was green, and what have I left out? Red. What are those authors? The ones that come from Yorkshire.
Harriet?
Huh?
Harriet? No.
Who?
Harriet?
No.
No.
It's 4 sisters and they all died.
Oh, Bronte.
Bronte, that's right.
Yes.
There was Bronte. That was the 4th house. They were red. And of course,
you stayed in the same house all through.
We stayed in that house, and you fought for them, and you did everything, rivalry, etc., etc.
Did you have the same headmistress throughout the whole time?
Oh gosh, yes, Miss Haig. Dora Haig. M.A. She was fierce and we were all terrified of her. And
obviously you were boarding from all the way through.
Oh yes, you couldn't go. You see, the whole idea of these hill schools, these mountain schools, was that it took the children away from the heat of the plains, and it kept them all in one space, you know, as it were, in a boarding school, in a sort of a home from home almost.
Yeah.
For the year, which went from March to December. Now, in between, at the end of the first term, which went from March to June, you had a 10-day, what they called a 10-day break, a holiday. A lot of the girls, as long as one of the parents could come up to Murree and go out and stay with them during those 10 days, that was all right. The rest of the school, or girls, would stay in school, but there would always be one of the form mistresses, you know, who looked after their own form, or looked after other of the other girls who stayed for the full 10 days in school, who didn't go wandering around all over the place. We had an English vicar. He would come to the school from the main church, which was in Upton, not Upton.
Murree.
Yes. And they used to come and take us in the next main sort of festival, church festival, like Easter and confirmation, preparing for confirmation, those sorts of things. That was always on a Wednesday.
Where did most of the teachers come from?
Well, they came from England.
Right.
Yes. Very few of them came from. Well, there was one girl. What was her name? She had been trained in Lahore University, which was quite sort of unusual, because most of them came out from England on a 3-year contract.
Yeah.
At the end of the 3 years, they were, I suppose, had to
reapply, or
yes. Yeah. If they wanted to come back, of course they came back, and everybody. That was a very good idea, because we had a great sort of carry on of the same staff and everything else. If they didn't want to come back, well, then they didn't, and Miss Haig would, or the university would get somebody else to come out.
Yeah.
But it was always a continuity. Except for the small ones, I think, little ones like Miss Mackenzie.
Okay, so
I think at lunch about 1 o'clock, after which we had to break, probably games or something like that, as far as I can remember.
What sort of games?
Netball.
Lacrosse?
No, we didn't do lacrosse in Upton, Murree, because it's considered too high. They did it in Auckland House, because it wasn't quite as high as. So.
Tennis? You had tennis courts there, didn't you?
Huh?
Did you play tennis? Because you had tennis courts there.
We had tennis and netball and all the usual things that. Or rounders, I remember, because we used to sneer at the Americans calling it something else. And so, and then after that there was
the afternoon.
Yes, the afternoon. I think there was a walk, of course, when we all had to have your partner, and you used to go in a crocodile, and one of the sort of walks that they had around the Elysium Hill, or one of those places, and then after that we probably had tea, I think, which consisted of a bun and something or the other. I can't remember really. It wasn't anything exciting. And I think that must have been a bit later on. And then, when did we have homework? I know we had an hour's homework, which was absolutely set in stone, you know, and you had to do it. You were herded back into your classroom, and you did the homework that was set for that day.
Yeah.
And then...
Time off in the evening?
Then we had time off, of course, and we could do what we liked. Or maybe we were sort of hauled off to have our... we had to have a Shakespeare every year, set by the
examination board.
Yeah, and we also expected to turn it into a play, a proper, you know, stage play. If we're lucky enough to sort of have someone who could do it, and we did. We had a very good Lorna Smith, who was a very good producer. Yeah. And she would drag us off to practice, you know, and tell us what we had to learn next, and all, you know, how to do the, you know, the usual sort of thing when you're practicing for plays.
And you were in a play, weren't you? You were in a photograph of you in. Was it Murree?
I was Nerissa, but that was when we did the thing of Mercy is Not Strange. He dropped it like something rains from heaven, you know, upon the earth beneath. That was the Jewish one, you know.
Right. Is that the Merchant of Venice?
The Merchant of Venice.
And what do you remember about Murree as a town?
Very little, because we lived outside the town, and we used to go. We used to walk to church every Sunday, and of course walk back again. And we used to go, as far as I can remember, we used to go to both the services, or we used to have one service in chapel, in our school chapel, and one service, either matins or in song, in the church, in the main church. And at that time, you know, I might just mention this, there was no electricity. We had, you know, these lamps, which would smell it as you came in through the door.
There was no electricity in the whole school?
No, we had 10 at, what was it? I know when it went off. It went off at 10 o'clock p.m. That was the time of that it was on, you know, because we had our own generator. You see, little things are coming back. We had our own generator, and that was one of the servants, I think, used to be in charge of that. And that went off at 10 o'clock. So you can always tell, because the light would suddenly dim, and then the next thing would be off, you know. So and then, of course, later on, we did get electricity. Better than Myanmar, I can tell you. It was still having candles when I came there. So that was, you know, I suppose.
So that lasted, Jen, from sort of 1930 till 1936.
Yes.
And so that would be the same pattern every year. You'd go up to school in March, and then.
Well, no, it got. Of course, it did get. We didn't have. We did have electric lights eventually. They must have sort of done something in the winter when we were at home. Yeah. But you know, when they sort of repaint, decorated, and all the rest.
But I mean, in terms of the school. That's what you went up to school in March. You were there throughout.
We were there for 9 months.
9 months, and then you would go.
And then we'd go home for 3 months.
When would you go home? In November.
And we went back in December. Right. About the 15th of December, we packed our trunks with the help of matron, who was gosh, she was very clever. She could speak 7 languages, but she decided not to teach or do anything like that. She decided to be a matron instead. Yeah. Used to teach us horrible medicines and things.
So you drive back down to the same way as you came up.
So to begin, yes, we had to go back the same way we came up. Oh, great glee! and that was great fun because we used to decorate, have homeward bound. They used to get great big sort of what's that paper? Graph paper. Yeah. And the girls, the clever ones, you know, used to make verses and funny things, and put them on this graph paper. You see, to show that we were homeward bound. And we used to collect, of course, nearer going home, about the 15th. We'd collect all the mistletoe and holly, plenty of that. You see up in the north.
Was there a boys' school there?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So did you have any socialising with them?
Certainly not. No, oh no. You were allowed a visit from your brother. That was Lorna Spear. Her brother was in what they called Gora Gully. It wasn't Gora Gully. It was St Edward's. It'll be in that book there, you know. And that was a combined, you know, girls.
Oh, right. Because
when we sat for our exam at the end of our school year, school at all, we had to go to St Edward's to sit the exam.
Oh, right.
Because it had nothing to do with where we went.
No.
It was just sort of, well, what's the word I want? You know, sort of, nothing to do with the university, no. The place where we went to sit our exam.
No, sure.
So.
And so what you sat your final exams in your final year, presumably? Did you?
In December.
Yeah.
And the thing that I shall never ever forget was we'd just done, those of us who were doing maths, but we all had to do maths, that's right, all the maths girls. We'd sat our exam, we were walking back from the school building to where we'd been sort of, where we had to stay the night. And as we came up the hill towards our to where we were going to sort of sleep, Lorna Smith, who was then in charge of our group, she came dashing down this slope. And guess what? Guess what? She said, "The king has abdicated." And I know that date because it was 1936. Maths, languages, and and English, the whole of English, you know, that meant the books and everything else, they were compulsory. If you didn't pass on any of those 3, you sat the whole lot again the next year. So you can imagine the tension. Yeah. And the 2 Lornas didn't pass. Right. The 2 girls in my photograph, Lorna's Pierre and Heidi, thankfully. We got through the whole lot exam. And that was, well, we didn't have to do all 9 because some of us had dropped history, for instance. We were allowed to drop, I think, a couple of them. But you had to do those 3 were compulsory.
So, were the good days at St Denis?
Oh yeah, we had all sorts of. For Easter, for example, our mothers, in our case, mother, she used to send money for Easter eggs. That's for Peggy and myself. And we used to get lovely big, you know, she used to send money for a nice big Easter egg, which we each had. Of course, we didn't see much of each other in school, I must admit. And so we used to sort of, that was a holiday, of course,
Yeah.
Easter. And so that whole weekend was, we got up late.
Yeah.
And we had a late breakfast, and it was all sort of knees up and jollifications, you know.
But,
And so I've got photographs of us sitting with these these ribbons that you get around Easter eggs. We've got them tied around our heads. I've got photographs of that.
yeah. So, all in all, would you say being at St Denis the best days of your life, school days, or was it a bit of a chore?
No, they were. I was given the most. Well, I noticed that when I came here to this country, that my education had been absolutely 5-star. We had excellent staff, all sort of, you know.
Well, they were all from
girls,
Oxbridge and Cambridge, weren't they?
all these highly qualified staff, and we couldn't have bettered it. No, I'm always so thankful that I did go, because we really did very well.
Yeah.
And of course we had it was a very small, they were quite small schools. I think we had about 180 all, you know, that means everybody.
Yeah.
One thing that rather struck me as being quite out of the way was the fact that the girls, some girls used to learn music. And once a year, or was it twice? I'm sure, I think it was once. A qualified, of course, a person from England would come out to these boarding schools to take the high exams, the school music exams.
Yeah.
And the one who came was Max Perroni. He came to St Denis. He probably came to Auckland House as well, but anyway, he travelled around taking the girls in their exams, the high upper grade school exams. That is the music ones. And I remember years later, I was going for a walk, going shopping in Upton, and I saw one of our girls who used to learn music here, sitting in the car reading a script, that not in English, but in music.
Yes.
And I was talking to her. I said, "How do you manage to remember all this?" She says, "We read it just like you read a book," she said. So I said, "Well, who teaches you now?" And I could have fallen flat. She said, "Max Perroni." Well, he'd come to St Denis all those years ago, and then to tell me that he'd been just taking people, still taking them in exams here.
Amazing.